10, but before we go there, all right? Last week we ended, all right, what exactly is the soul, salvation of our soul? It's a little confusing based on all the scriptures that you went through. This week, Barbara Hubb, not by chance, God gave it to her, all right, but she's studying something different. She runs across something that will help us, all right, a little bit to that, all right? So, look right up here, all right? Spirit, soul, all right? You'll see, all right, this relationship principles of Jesus by Tom Holliday, all right? He wrote this. It says, love him with all your heart. Your heart is where you feel. Love him with all your soul. Your soul is where you decide. Love him with all your mind. Your mind is where you think. Love him with all your strength. Your strength is where you physically interact with the world around you. So maybe that'll help a little bit with the distinction. The biggest thing that confuses people is the mind and the soul, because they're not the same word, all right? But that's a good one. The mind is kind of the difference between wisdom and knowledge, all right? You can have all sorts of knowledge, but if you don't know how to practically use it and do it right, you don't have any wisdom. So maybe that helps a little bit with that issue. Okay, so let's go on. 1 Peter 1:10. And my version of the Bible, it has a caption ahead of it that says anticipation in the past. All right, so let's read through this once here, and then we'll go over it line by line like we've been doing. Okay, verse 10. Concerning this salvation, the prophets who spoke of the grace that was to come to you searched intently and with the greatest care, trying to find out the time and circumstances to which the Spirit of Christ in them was pointing when he predicted the sufferings of Christ and the glories that would follow. That's 10:11. Okay, it's kind of a run-on sentence. It's a little hard to follow exactly there, but like we've been doing here, we'll go through line by line and try to. Good. All right. First thing, concerning this salvation. Salvation of what? Just got done studying that one. The salvation of our souls. All right. That was 8 and 9. We're through that one. All right. Now it says concerning this salvation, the prophets. All right. Now what prophets? All right. The Old Testament prophets. All right. Was it 2 prophets? Was it 5 prophets? Was it 10? What prophets? All right. Or does it even make a difference that we even know who they were? All right. Now, tell me real quick. What were the prophets doing? All right. All right. In general, what did they do? What did a prophet do? Yeah. All right. He got some kind of knowledge, wisdom, insight from God, right? All right. He got this. All right. Then it was his job to go out and proclaim it. All right. And then it was the responsibility of the people that heard this prophecy to act on it or do whatever, right? North?
I've often read and heard that the prophets were defined as the mouthpiece of God.
Exactly. All right. So we gotta take a small. Yeah, you're not gonna read that. You're gonna go back. Deuteronomy 18. So flip back to Deuteronomy 18. There's a section in Deuteronomy that's specifically on the prophets. We're not gonna take long here. All right. But Deuteronomy 18:14 really has a good definition of the prophets, who they were, why they were sent, so forth, so on. And the book of Deuteronomy means second law. All right, this was Moses. All right, when he wrote Deuteronomy, he's basically recapping a lot of the same stuff that was written previously. So when you read Deuteronomy, you say, I read that before, or did I miss it or whatever? Well, you probably did read it before, because a lot of it was a redefining or a restating of what was previously said. All right, Deuteronomy. Start with 18:14. The nations you will dispossess, listen to those who practice sorcery or divination. But as for you, the Lord your God has not permitted you to do so. The Lord your God will raise up for you a prophet like me from among your own brothers. Okay, so right there, Moses is saying, I'm a prophet. All right, you're not supposed to follow these sorcerers and these other guys. All right, you're supposed to follow me. You must listen to them, for this is what you asked of the Lord your God at Horeb on the day of the assembly, when you said, let us not hear the voice of the Lord our God, nor see his great fire anymore, or we will die. Right? They were afraid. They didn't want to go through that. They wanted to hear from a more human side of the business. So Moses is just restating it. Verse 17. The Lord said to me, what they say is good. I will raise up for them a prophet like you from among their brothers. I will put my words in his mouth, and he will tell them everything I command him. All right, so there's the basic principle on the prophet. All right, the Lord puts the words that he's supposed to say in them, and then they're supposed to spew it out. All right. 19. If anyone does not listen to my words that the prophet speaks in my name, I myself will call him to account. Aha! Now here we have some accountability that comes along with it. If the prophet comes along and says a certain thing and you don't want to follow it, you don't do what the prophet says to do, who's going to handle it? God's going to handle it, right? All right? The prophet doesn't have the responsibility here to do it. He has the responsibility to send forth the message that God gave them. All right? God is going to handle it. All right? He says that right here. All right? I myself will call him to account. Verse 20. But a prophet who presumes to speak in my name anything I have not commanded him to say, or a prophet who speaks in the name of other gods, must be put to death. All right? So pretty bad punishment for the guy who claims to be a false prophet. All right? Put the guy to death. Verse 21. You may say to yourselves, how can we know when a message has not been spoken to the Lord? Great question. How do you know when the guy is speaking, all right, that he's really a prophet or not? Because if he's a false prophet, you put him to death. If he's a real prophet, you better listen to him, or you have consequences on what's going to happen to you, right? Great question. How do you know when a guy says something, all right, whether you're supposed to listen to him? It says so right here, all right? How can you know when a message has not been spoken by the Lord? If a prophet proclaims in the name of the Lord does not take place or come true, that is a message the Lord has not spoken. Okay, so if he comes forth with some spewing out of his mouth and it doesn't happen, it doesn't come true, it didn't come from the Lord. All right, the end of 22 there. That prophet has spoken presumptuously, do not be afraid of him. So, the final message there is, you know that a prophet is a true prophet when what he said comes true. Right? Now, therein lies the problem. If a guy comes out with a prophecy, all right, and it doesn't come true for 200 years, for 200 years it's sitting there, and you don't know whether it's true or not. Right? In most cases, the prophet would have something that came true immediately, all right, so that you could test that the prophet was actually true. Then he would make these other prophecies that might be 100 years, 200 years, 500 years later. You know those are true too, because he just proven to himself that he is a true prophet. All right, now, back to our, before we go, the whole issue of prophets. There were lots of prophets, all right? There's list from A to G, all right? There's J to S, all right? There's the rest of them, all right? And then there's a listed false prophets in the Bible. Okay, we don't need to talk about any of those guys, but what's it tell you? There were a lot of prophets, true prophets. God put the words in their mouths, they spoke them, we were supposed to listen to them, all right? And then there were some false prophets that tried to claim that they were, all right? and there's more of them, all right? Just like the Gospels are written, say, hey, I'm not writing all the stuff. I've written the Gospels here, but this is not everything that I know. Did I write in the Gospels? Okay? Same thing here with the prophets. Not everything that they prophesied, not everything that came true is written down. All right? But nonetheless, if we go back to our 1 Peter here, 1:10, concerning this salvation of the prophets, all right? These guys, all right, are the true guys that God put, all right, in their hearts, gave them the words, all right? They're out there speaking these things. Why is it that Peter would even bring that up? Why do we even hear, all right, why would Peter put in here the fact that prophets also did this? All right, he's speaking to a lot of the Jews that were there. Not everybody that he's talking to is a Jew, but he's talking to the Jews. What did the Jews use? The Old Testament, all right? They used the prophets, all the stories the prophets told, the prophets said, this is what's supposed to happen, all right? So they believed, all right, that the prophets foretold about the coming of Christ. All right, so when Peter puts in here that, hey, the prophets, he's just re-emphasizing the fact that, okay, this stuff that I'm saying, all right, that is coming to you, all right, the prophets were all part of it. And he's going to go on to say here, all right? Follow me there. I don't think we need to say anything more than that, but he's emphasizing this whole issue. There were lots of prophets, and these prophets told the truth. All right, the point behind it. All right? So, concerning this salvation, the salvation of our soul, the prophets, all right, who did what? Who spoke of the grace that was to come to you. All right? What's grace? That's the next word that's in here. Everybody got that one? You've heard it over and over and over again. What is grace?
Undeserved favor.
Undeserved favor. Everyone want to agree with that one? I'm about to push the button. We'll see. Okay. You got it, Patty. All right. Favor given to somebody who doesn't deserve it. All right. What does that mean? All right. You can say it in different words, like, all right. We don't deserve what we get, but we're given some kind of favor for it. All right. Now, Peter just said that the prophets were looking to give us grace. All right. So they were looking to give us, all right, some kind of favor, all right, that we didn't deserve. What's the favor we're going to get? Christ, all right? He already talked about it, right? He's already been through it, but he's coming back again and telling you the exact same thing. Now, how much does grace cost? Huh? How much does it cost? Trick question. Liz?
Well, the acronym is God's riches at Christ's expense. So Christ
There
is
you
the
go.
one who paid. We're not.
Did you get that?
Mm-hmm.
God's riches at Christ's expense? All right. So it did cost something, but what's it cost us? All right. No penalty to us. The penalty's already been paid. Christ has already died. He's already paid the penalty. So this grace that comes to us, all right, this favor, all right, that's going to be given to us is free of charge. There's no penalty. We don't have to pay the penalty for it. All right. So that's what grace is. It gets confused easily with mercy. All right. All right. Have mercy on me. When somebody says have mercy on me, what are you asking for? Be lenient, right?
Don't make me pay the penalty.
Yeah, don't make me pay the penalty, please, whatever. It's close, but it's not the same. But in this case, we're given this favor. This favor is the salvation of our souls, all right? It's free of charge because Christ has already paid the penalty, all right? Okay, so back here, concerning this salvation, the salvation of our souls, all these prophets were out there looking for Christ, all right? They're looking for the time, looking for the place, all right? And they spoke of the grace to come. So when they're talking about the grace to come, they're talking about Christ coming, all right? And the fact that when he comes, this favor that he paid for, we don't, free to us, all right? It's coming to us. Totally clear again, something that he's restated before. All right? But when you break it down like we did, all right, the prophets foretold of it. And remember, they were looking for Christ, right? They were looking for the time. They were looking for the place. And that's what comes here next, all right? What did these prophets do, all right? They spoke of the grace, so they spoke of Christ's coming, all right? It was to come for who? But they searched intently and with the greatest care, all right? What does that say about what they did? But they searched intently with the greatest care.
With purpose and direction.
Right, all right? They didn't do a sloppy job. All right, how many times did you ask somebody, that we can take teenagers, we can pick up them all we want, all right? We still got a teenager, you're not a teenager yet, okay, good, you're past. That was a close
She's
one.
not one yet.
Yeah. Pass. All right, you give a teenager a task and in 3 minutes it's done, I'm finished. And you say, how good a job had you done, all right? Or you can give somebody a job and they didn't get it done. They didn't get it done. You bug them and you bug them and bug them. Next thing you know, poof, it's done. What happened? They didn't do anything, all right? They just let it go, and next thing you know, they did it. That's not the kind of job that the prophets were doing here. They were searching intently. They were looking very diligently, all right, searching to make sure that the person that was coming, Christ, all right, when he was going to come, all right, because it says right here, they were trying to find out the time and circumstances, all right? They searched intently and with great care, trying to find out the time and the circumstances, right? The who, what, when, where, and how. Now, did they get it? Did the prophets ever get the answer to their search?
Sort of,
You sure?
part of it.
The wise men figured it out.
Ah, North got it right there. They did, because the wise men figured it out. All right? The wise men were off hundreds or thousands of miles away. Now, they were under the tutelage of Daniel, all right? Daniel knew. He was a prophet. He told them. But the wise men figured it out, all right? They knew exactly when and where, right? Because they come to Herod, all right? And say, Herod, we want to meet this new king that just came. And Herod says, I got to get rid of this guy. I'm king, all right? We're not going to have any other kings around here. What's he do? Tells the wise men, go find him. When you've given him your gifts, come back, tell me where he is, and I want to pay homage to him. I want to come, right? Wise men were smart enough to give them their frankincense, gold, and myrrh, go back home and avoid Herod, all right? But they knew it, all right? Now, the reason why you said no is because so many of the Jews today still don't believe that Jesus was the Messiah, all right? They did miss it from that standpoint. They didn't believe all the words that the prophet said that pointed to that exact day when Christ was born. We know that because we're on the other side of it. Now we have the New Testament that went with it, but back then they didn't, all right? But Peter is telling us here that the prophets, all right, they're looking for this grace that's going to come to us through Christ. They searched intently. They want to know the time and the circumstance. They want to know the who, what, when, where, and how. They want to know exactly, and they got it. All right? They didn't believe it, but they had it exactly. All right? All right? So Christ came exactly when he was supposed to happen. All right. So to keep going here. So, trying to find the time and the circumstance to which the Spirit of Christ in them. What's funny about that term, Spirit of Christ? Anything? All right, the Spirit of Christ in them. All right, in who? Let's go to the in them part. In the who?
It's talking about the Old Testament prophets.
Yes, okay.
And Christ hasn't been born yet.
Yes.
So it presupposes the Trinity, which hadn't really been revealed that fully at the time that the prophets were operating.
You get a gold star. You got it.
Good job.
All right. Christ, all right, this is another one of those verses that reinforces the fact that in the beginning was Christ, all right, that Christ was right along with God right along with the Spirit way back in the beginning, because this verse is saying that it was the Spirit of Christ that spoke to the prophets, all right, who told the prophets, all right, to speak the words and to search diligently, all right? But at that point, they're looking for Christ, and yet the Spirit of Christ is the one that's telling them to go look, all right? So it's wording that seems odd, but it just reinforces the fact that Christ was in the beginning, all right? Peter is just telling us right here and now that it was him, all right? Could have just said Spirit, could have said Spirit of God, all right? All the same meaning, all right? But Peter says Spirit of Christ to reinforce the issue that Christ was in the beginning, all right? And he was in fact telling the prophets where to look, what to say, so forth and so on, all right? So just kind of an interesting sideline that goes there with that. All right. So, next thing here. It says, the Spirit of Christ is in them. It was pointing when he, who's he? We had this discussion last week. Who's the he? Pointing when he predicted the sufferings of Christ and the glories that would follow.
Spirit of Christ.
Okay? It's capitalized he. We had that conversation last night. We're talking about Christ again. All right? So the Spirit of Christ was in them, and he was pointing when he, the Spirit of Christ, when Christ predicted his coming. Kind of sounds like this infinite loop here. Wait a minute. Christ is predicting his coming, all right? But Christ hasn't come yet. So which one came first? Easy solution. He was always there in the beginning. If you can resolve that in your mind, you don't have any conflict with this, right? All right, but if you have a conflict, if you say in your mind, wait a minute, this is Christ we're talking about. Christ was talking about his coming, but he hasn't come yet. How can this be? You could try to dismiss this verse, or try to dismiss Peter, or somehow rationalize your way around this not being a valid book. But it's simple if you just understand that Christ was in the beginning, he was with God, he was the Word, all right, all of it was together. So he was there, yeah, he was telling us. Okay, got that one? Sherry, you okay here? All right, I just want to make sure. You all right?
We were just saying, in my Bible, they don't have he
Capitalized.
capitalized.
Yep.
And
Mine.
reading down to the footnotes, it's talking like, for instance, Isaiah, how he predicted, how Christ was gonna suffer for us and things like that. So before you said that, I thought it was just talking about the Old Testament prophet predicting this.
Yeah. It's really, in this version, remember we talked that last week.
Yeah.
Sometimes some versions will capitalize the he that
Sometimes
refers to
they
Christ.
don't.
Sometimes they don't. Why they do that, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know how they do it.
That's
All
good
right,
to know.
but, yeah, so you really have to be careful when you see that he and try to figure out whether the he is really talking about Christ or it's a different person,
Right.
right? So it's a good question, but okay. This is one of those loops that,
But the pronoun would modify the noun.
oh my goodness, the school teacher's
So
coming out.
it has to be
Yeah.
them if it would be they.
There you go, there you go. Thank you,
Thank you.
yeah.
That's-
My point here was just to reinforce the issue of the he. Sometimes it's capitalized, sometimes it's not. You just have to be careful if you're studying, all right, which he is being, and if you're a school teacher, prove you got it, no problem. All right, so.
We've been out of school a while.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so let's go back. They searched intently with the greatest care, trying to find out the time and circumstances to which the Spirit of Christ in them was pointing when he predicted, all right, we talked about that. He predicted, he was telling what all these Old Testament prophets were saying. Hey, he's coming here, all right? And he predicted two things: the sufferings of Christ and the glories that would follow. All right? All right, you with me there? All right, so that's what the Old Testament prophets were doing. Now, take a look at this slide here. The prophets, from a time standpoint, the prophets lived prior to Christ's coming, right? So everything that they talked about, all right, was before they happened. So they have no firsthand knowledge whatsoever of Christ's coming. They don't know New Testament, they don't know anything else. All the stuff about him coming, having to suffer on the cross, and all the other stuff that he did, then raising from the dead 3 days ago, and then all that we know about the second coming, all right, that we get from the New Testament, they didn't know. But they had all these prophecies, right? We go back in the Old Testament, we can go lots of places that point to that. They don't have any knowledge of it. But now, we're living in between. We're living in between the sufferings of Christ and the glories that would follow, right? Because the sufferings of Christ have already happened, right? He's already came. He's already come. She's proper there, I forget. All right, he's already come. All right, so we already know that part. So we're living in the middle. All right. So we've already seen the sufferings of Christ. Now what are we doing? We're looking forward to the glories that'll follow. All right. So it's interesting. All right, that Peter talks about the fact that. When he talks about predicted the sufferings of Christ and the glories that would follow. All right. The Old Testament prophets were looking for the whole thing. We've already got half the picture. All right, so we know that. So, with me there? All right. So, now, let's go on to verse 12. It was revealed to them that they were not serving themselves, but you. And these things which now have been announced to you through those who preach the gospel to you by the Holy Spirit sent from heaven, things into which angels long to look. Another one of those sentences, all right, that is confusing, a little hard to, all right, so I'll read it again. It was revealed. Now, I've got the New American Standard Version right here, all right. If you're reading the NIV, it's a little different. Of course, if you're reading the King James, it's different from some of the other versions, but this happens to be. It was revealed to them that they were not serving themselves, but you. In these things which now have been announced to you through those who preach the gospel to you by the Holy Spirit sent from heaven, things into which the angels long to look. All right, just go through here again. It was revealed to them. What's the it? What was revealed to them? If you don't get this one, I don't blame you. You don't know how many times I went round and round trying to figure out exactly what the it was. And to Nancy's point, you got to go back to the previous verse. You got to go around. All right, I'm going to make it easy. It was the search. All right, the searching, this intent, the greatest care of the time. All right, the search. All right, it was revealed to them. They were told, hey, we got to find the search. We got to look for the coming of Christ. We got to find all these details, all right? So the search was revealed to them, all right? They're looking for Christ, all right? Not that they were not serving themselves, but you, all right? Why do the search? He's saying not for the prophets, not just for the sake of being a prophet, being famous later on because you found something, you searched, you got it, it came true later on, all right? It goes back to the grace in the previous chapter, all right, that was coming to us. All right, he said, why did they do this in search? Why? For us, all right? It wasn't for their own purpose, all right? It was, all right, for you. That's all he's saying there in that first part, all right? All right, and these things which have been announced to you, right? The gospel is being given to you, all right? So the whole intent for all that the prophets were doing was for you. Peter is writing this to these churches in Turkey, all right, for them. All right? All this stuff was there for them, all right? They talked about the gospel being preached, so we know what the gospel is, all right? Back then, by saying to preach the gospel, it's probably confusing to them. All right, what's the gospel? Okay, well, that's the good news. All right, that's the whole story that Christ really did come, that he died on the cross, that He's risen, that He brings us grace, all right? That if we have faith, all right, and accept Him, we no longer have to worry about going to the fiery place, all right? So that's the gospel He did. And now, the last thing that's in this that's interesting, it could easily end right there where it says, by the Holy Spirit sent from heaven, period. The story would be completely intact, wouldn't take away from anything, all right? But again, Peter adds a little piece of trivia, so to speak, onto the end of that. It says, things into which angels long to look. What does that mean? Tom?
The message says, do you realize how fortunate you are? Angels were given anything to get Jesus.
There you go. Hear that? Say, read that really loud for everybody.
Do you realize how fortunate you are? Angels would have given anything to be in on this.
All right, angels would have been given. The angels, as powerful as the angels were, right? All right? They came, they proclaimed a few things and did stuff. The angels, all right, aren't part of the gospel. They're not part of the message, all right? That word look, there, the very last word, all right, Greek means to bend over and look down, all right? It doesn't mean you can look to the side, you can look to the left, you can look up, you can look. That's not what that word means. That word means to bend over and to look down. You'll find a lot of commentaries that will explain, and that's why they'll say, we believe that the angels are in heaven, they're up there, they're down looking upon us, all right, because of words like that say, hey, they're bent over intently looking down. But to Tom's point here, all right, we have, all right, a very precious position here, of which the angels would love to participate in, but cannot, all right? Barbara?
With that point, so many times you see people say, when somebody passes away, oh, there's another angel in heaven. And this verse itself shows that is just so false.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
There's a
And
lot.
you don't,
Well, I
oh,
think the other one is making sure you delineate that the angels don't have any more insight than we do.
got it, exactly.
Very important.
Right, the angels don't know everything, right? As much